The full terms of Tua Tagovailoa's 4-year, $212.4 million contract extension are here, and we are breaking it all down here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day, even on a Saturday, here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Guys, we have been training for this show all summer long. This is a blend of everything we've talked about and all the times that I get into my salary cap nerdgasms here on the show, and you guys have endured them, and we've talked about the salary cap and how structuring of contracts works and how to manipulate the money and why it's structured a certain kind of way and what it means to be structured a certain kind of way and the ways and avenues and the implications of how you structure a contract, particularly the biggest contract in franchise history. This is a biggie, and you have the opportunity to watch this on YouTube. I will have some visual aids up for this show. If you're just listening, you can listen, and we'll talk through everything as well, but highly recommend the YouTube channel for those of you who like to have the visual aid to help you process numbers, because this is a lot of numbers and big numbers with several commas in them, right? And lots of those numbers across the next 5 seasons of play for the Miami Dolphins between 2024 and 2028. So Tua Tagovailoa gets his contract with a $42 million signing bonus when he puts pen to paper. Is he lefty? I'm lefty. I don't know if he's lefty writing or not. That'll be my next part of the scouting report. When he puts pen to paper and signs the contract, he gets a check for $42 million. That is his signing bonus. And as a reminder, every signing bonus in the NFL, you can prorate across the life of the contract up to a maximum of 5 years. Now, this is a 4-year contract extension plus this year's 5th-year option year of his previous contract. So he has 5 years of player control, which means the $42 million is going to get spread out against the cap across 5 seasons of salary cap at a price point of each one of those of $8.4 million per season is the prorated annual portion of his salary cap. The year 1 salary for Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins opted to give him the minimum salary of what they were required to pay him on your week-by-week game checks, because you're already writing him a check for $42 million. So from a cash flow perspective, he was due to get $23.171 million in cash this year. He's going to end up taking home $43.125 million in cash. So it's effectively a $20 million raise this year in cash. But again, you're spreading $42 million out across 5 seasons of salary cap, which means Tua Tagovailoa's year 1 salary cap is not the rigid $23.171 million 5th-year option that's all the cash and you have to pay it against the cap in that year because there's no years behind it to have fluidity or flexibility with it. That's all out the window because they signed the contract extension. So this is where, if you are watching on YouTube, we are going to pull up the handy-dandy template that's nice and color-coded as far as things that are guaranteed, things that are paid out in certain windows. So it is a $1,125,000 base salary for 2024 and a $42 million signing bonus that across 5 seasons is $8,400,000 in each of the next 5 seasons against the salary cap. That brings his 2024 scheduled salary cap hit to $9,525,000, down from $23.171. So the Dolphins get about $13.5 million in cap space for this year, the 2024 season, right now. And as a reminder, you don't lose what you don't use against the salary cap. And that's a very important piece of information, because with all of this space, you have the potential to adjust Tyreek Hill's contract, although I do think an instance like that would buy you even more salary cap space. In an instance like this, you have room to potentially front load a contract extension for a player who's maybe in a contract year, like a young star safety in Javon Holland. You do have the opportunity to go out and sign a player in free agency. I know everybody's asking me, "Oh, do you think they're going to sign an offensive lineman?" I'm not going to tell you yes. I don't want to get your hopes up. Would it be super cool if they signed an offensive lineman that we had the confidence in would come in and be one of your 5 best guys, and particularly a guy on the inside, and start for you? Yes, it would. Do I think that's going to happen? I got no clue, and I don't want to give you hope that it is going to happen. The Dolphins and Mike McDaniel very clearly have an offensive ideology in how they value the offensive line. I think competition's good, but I think if you're going to bring somebody else in for competition, you want somebody you think can feasibly start. Definitively start. This $13.5 million in new cap space, effectively, for Miami, we're rounding that number to make it a nice, neat number, allows you all of those conversations. You can now explore what is that going to look like. But from a Tua Tagovailoa contract perspective, this is only year 1 of what is 5 years of player control. What does the rest of it look like? What is how they chose to structure the money? Did they have option bonuses that you can do the same thing with a signing bonus as and push all around? Do they have a lot of guaranteed salary? What's the cash flow look like? Where is there large sums of cash scheduled to flow through? Where is there a lighter, maybe exit ramp strategy? These are all things that are revealed when you can see the full terms of the contract. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk did publish the full terms of the contract. It's now up on spotrac.com if you want to see it for yourself. But we are building the same thing here on the show so you all can see it with me and talk through it piece by piece instead of just looking at the finished product and trying to interpret what all of the numbers individually mean. So that's coming up next. Make sure you stick with us here on Locked on Dolphins. Passion, drive, and patience are not just the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're to speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guarantee Fit available only to U.S. customers. So this is from Tua Tagovailoa's perspective. Jordan Love got about $75 million signing bonus as the other quarterback contract extension that dropped on Friday. So from that perspective, Tua doesn't get the same boost and flow, but he makes up for some of it with a roster bonus. And this is the most fascinating piece of this contract, in my opinion, is the 2025 roster bonus. It is fully guaranteed, so there's no questions asked, right? Like they're going to have to write the check one way or another. But the roster bonus was something that the team could have proactively paid out across 5 seasons of play. They chose not to do that. It is due next March, presumably March. And it is $25 million, which means it is a one-time check for $25 million. Now, the Dolphins can reclassify this as a new signing bonus if they restructure his contract and then prorate it out if they choose to. But as of right now, we are operating under the assumption, based on the reports, that this is a one-time payment of $25 million that the team is currently scheduled. For one reason or another, they elected to put this on the books as a one-time cap charge of $25 million. That in itself, you'd say, okay, quarterback money, that's not too bad, right? Well, not when you consider the other part of this 2025 salary, which is an additional $25 million, $25,046,000 to be exact, that is also fully guaranteed. So in 2025, from a cash perspective, based off his base salary and his roster bonus, you're talking about just over $50 million in cash after collecting $43 million in cash in 2024. The other part that is applicable to every other year on the contract from here on out is there is a $250,000 workout bonus, which is very easily achievable for the starting quarterback of the team. You show up to minicamp and OTAs and training camp and do all the things, and that allows you to collect effectively a free $250,000 for doing the bare minimum in the offseason. But there's also up to $750,000 in per game active bonuses every year starting in 2025. So if you play 17 out of 17 games, you get 17/17 of $750,000. If you play 10 games out of 17, you get 10/17 of $750,000 as far as like an add-on. But it's a maximum from a performance bonus, I suppose, of up to $1 million per season. I will proactively put that in all 4 seasons on the rest of the contract. So based on showing up to work out and playing in all 17 games, Tua can earn an additional $1 million in cash every year starting in 2025. This is, in itself, $51 million in cash. But because everything is scheduled to hit in that individual year, there's no prorated dollars. This ends up being a fairly large salary cap charge, and you can see it's on the books here. His current scheduled salary cap commitment for 2025, after a $9.5 million cap hit in 2024, is almost $60 million because you have the second $8.4 million of the signing bonus prorated out on top of all the cash that he is owed. That's the bad news. The good news, the Dolphins can, if things go well this season, get to 2025 and say theoretically, hey, Tua, we want to take $20 million of your base salary in addition to your $25 million roster bonus. We want to give you one check for $45 million. And then they could then in turn turn that $45 million into $9 million, not 90. Geez, Kyle. No extra zeros here. You could then space out that $45 million across the next 5 seasons as $9 million a piece, just like you did with his initial signing bonus. So you have a ton of flexibility with what you choose to do with his lump sum money next year. That seems to be by design. When we talk about the Dolphins and what they like to do in this brain trust and operation and contracts, we talk about flexibility. They really covet flexibility and having a lot of different ways. Chris Kaufman, I was talking with Chris Kaufman of 3 yards per carry today after the details came out of this contract. And he talked about in the finance world, having that level of flexibility is usually something that people pay a lot of premium for. And in the NFL, to have this kind of fluidity with your contract is free. There's no ramifications. There's no charges. There's no hurdles to jump through. It's pretty much a matter of, hey, player, we want to take the money that you're owed to be paid across however many weeks of game checks this season, and we want to give it to you up front and write you an individual check and leave the bare minimum behind or a negotiable amount behind as far as what you get in your week-to-week checks. But we want to give you more money up front. Do you want to have more money up front? And every player in every instance in that world is going to say, yeah, write the check. That's fine. I don't care what you do with the salary cap because that doesn't impact me at all. So them leaving, I wonder how much of a roster bonus of $25 million, like what degree of that is giving a floor to Tua of guaranteed, hey, you're guaranteed to get a lump sum payment of a certain amount. Because the salary of $25 million is fully guaranteed as well. All of this money is guaranteed in 2025. Now, this is where you kind of start to get into conditions with the money. In 2026, this is where the first kind of vested money shows up. Tua's owed $54 million in base salary that year, in addition to the $1 million in performance incentives for workout bonuses and per game active bonuses during the regular season. That $54 million guarantees fully in March of 2025. So in 8 months' time, his 2026 salary of $54 million is going to fully guarantee. There is no funny money. There's no Jalen Hurts type structure where they say, hey, we're going to pay you $1.5 million and the other $52.5 million we're automatically, proactively going to put as a roster or an option bonus and divide it out across 5 seasons and put a void year on the back end of the deal. That's not to say the Dolphins can't do all of those things when you get to the start of the 2026 season. They kind of just left it in the way that gives you the most amount of flexibility as possible to take it as it comes. Does Tua play well? Okay, we'll max the full thing. Is Tua not playing well? Okay, well, then we can kind of assess what our exit strategy is with the contract as compared to if you had to write the check on March 15th, if you were going to do an option bonus and that money automatically prorates out, and then you've had an opportunity to move on from him in the same season, then you would have to eat all the salary cap because you already wrote the check. So that helps the tradability of the contract, but it doesn't necessarily help your salary cap situation to have the flexibility as far as what you choose to do with the contract. So again, this is why when we got to the top of the show and I said, these are the things that we've been training for all offseason long in talking about the salary cap and contract structures. It's all tied together in a deal like this. And the Dolphins, as they have always done, they show you their stripes and what they like, which is flexibility. And the only question that you have in the first 3 years of this deal is that 2025 bonus. Is it indeed a roster bonus? Why was it structured as a roster bonus? Was that a bone to throw for Tua to guarantee you're going to get a lump sum check of at least this amount of money? Why? It's hard to say. But they did. They kept it flexible. Now, we need to finish the terms of this contract. There's some incentives tied to playoff performance in this contract. They give it an additional up to $9 million in value. And then there's also kind of the long-term flexibility exit ramps that we've talked about with the Bradley Chubb contract and the Tyreek Hill contract and the Teron Armstead contract and the Jalen Ramsey contract, like all these contracts with all these big players that are currently cornerstones and pillars and identity pieces of what your roster looks like. Every single one of them intentionally has exit ramps. This one is no different. And I want to cover what that looks like for those of you who have questions about every possible outcome. I know we're all really fired up that Tua Tagovailoa, let's be honest, not all of us are really fired up that Tua Tagovailoa got his contract extension. I'm fired up. He's the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, and I'm a fan of the Dolphins. And I'm going to root for him to have as much success as possible. And you would think most any fan of the team would come out feeling the same way. But We have to explore all the possible outcomes because these are the kinds of things that are taken into consideration when you sit down with athletes first and you do negotiate a contract. Is we have to protect ourselves as the team from the worst case scenarios. Well, what do the worst case scenarios look like with this contract? We'll get into all of that as well as finishing the structure of this deal. That's up next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. This is not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those that aren't actively looking for a job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Over 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So let's jump right back into it with this contract. Finish the structure of the full term of the contract and go from there. The next chapter, we are through the fully guaranteed and guaranteed at signing dollars. There is some conditional guarantees for 2027, but the year one and year two money is fully guaranteed with the exception of the performance incentives. That's $1 million a piece, starting in 2025 as far as how many games you play, you show up for your workouts, so on and so forth. 2026 salary, that $54 million salary for 2026, that guarantees next March in 2025, a year in advance. 2027 has money that is guaranteed for injury, but it also has $3 million that fully guarantees in 2026, March of 2026. Why did the Dolphins do that? This is where the cash flow dramatically changes. You have Tua on board for $43 million in cash. You have him on board for potentially $51 million in cash. You have him on board for $54 million in cash. 2027, the cash dips below $40 million. Tua himself ends up, he's got a $31 million salary that is due that year. $3 million of that guarantees in March of 2026. So if Tua makes it to the 2026 season, $3 million of this $31 million salary will guarantee. He will also carry the fourth of the 5 years of the prorated signing bonus in 2027. There is currently no scheduled proration of the 2025 money, but he is due for a $5 million roster bonus that is due to him. It's not guaranteed, but it's an additional $5 million that he can collect if he is on the roster at the start of 2027. Usually some date within the first week of the league calendar year is when a check like that needs to be cut. So the Dolphins have an opportunity in this window, assuming they don't do other funny money stuff with the contract, which I have to imagine 2025 will have some level of restructure. It's just a question of how much, right? This is where the guaranteed money runs out. The rest of the salary, or the rest of the $20 million that has any kind of conditions to this, guarantees in March of 2027. So there's a big decision at the start of the league calendar year in 2027 that you're looking at a $5 million roster bonus and $17 million in salary that guarantees versus just $3 million that guarantees the previous year. You could see the cap hit as a result because the cash is significantly lower. It's a $45.4 million scheduled cap commitment with a cash flow that potentially sits between $1 million in performance incentives, a $5 million roster bonus, and then the $31 million base salary that's due. You're looking at a grand total of $37 million in cash flow that year versus these other years are mid-40s and up. This is a notable turning point in this contract where decisions can be made. If things are going good, this is probably the point where Tua says, hey, I've been getting a certain price point the last couple of years, and now I'm scheduled to make under $40 million with presumably the salary cap that's continuing to skyrocket. I'd love to get that readjusted. Why don't we negotiate that? That'll be his age 28 season in which this year comes into play. Then in 2028, there's not a lot of fluff attached to this. It's $41,400,000 in non-guaranteed salary. There's no guarantees attached to it, and then an additional $7 million roster bonus that is due at some point in that season. So there's roster bonuses, there's signing bonuses, there's guaranteed salary, there's non-guaranteed salary, there's salary that's guaranteed for injury, there's vested money that guarantees at a later date that gets rolled into your practical guarantees. But you take everything here, the base salaries of $1.1 million, $25 million, $54 million, $31 million, $41.4 million. You take the signing bonus of $42. You take the roster bonus in 2025 of $25 million. You got the roster bonuses in 27 and 28 that are not guaranteed. And then you take the $1 million performance incentives for 25, 26, 27, and 28, and you get a grand total of $235,571,000. That is the total of the contract. That is all the money. The salary cap hits out of this, as it is currently scheduled, $9.525 million in 2024, nearly $60 million charge in 2025. But there's about $51 million of that is fluid, that you could save about $40 million against the cap with whatever you choose to do with that contract in 2025. If you want to move the maximum amount of money that you possibly can, you can create $40 million in cap space with a maximum restructure of Tua's contract next March. The best thing that could happen for the Dolphins from a salary cap perspective, Tua blows this year out of the water, and it becomes a no-brainer to say, we'll take all the cap space from this contract that we can get. We have even more confidence in who you are as a player. There is a cap charge in 2026 as currently stands of $63.4 million. A cap charge of $45.4 million in 2027, and then a $57.8 million cap charge in 2028. But again, reminder, the only prorated money right now is the $42 million. So when you get through 2025 and 2024, and you start the 2026 calendar year and league year, if you don't do anything with Tua's contract next offseason, you're talking you have less than $26 million in potential dead money in outs of that contract, depending on what you choose to do with it. This is an extremely, extremely fluid contract, especially relative to the terms that you would expect. And it's by design that they can take information as it comes while simultaneously ensuring that they have a contract in place with the player to ensure that the player's attention is focused on the right thing, which is football. And SpotRack made a great point because they did a whole summary of this contract, and they said that the 3-year cash flow of this contract is about $34 million more than what a 5th-year option and consecutive franchise tags would be. So for the price of $34 million over 3 seasons, is that worth it to have Tua have the confidence of a deal in place and to have maximum cap flexibility at your disposal as far as how to create space as compared to if it's the franchise tag, just like it's just the 5th-year option, you can't do anything with it against the cap. That's the price that they paid from now through 2026 in that regard. And you could get to 2027, pay the $3 million as far as it's effectively a buyout. And you're looking at, I think I have these numbers. Make sure I have it right. you could ultimately end up having, if you moved on in 2027 as a post-June 1st cut, you could save about $10 million in 2027 against what you're currently scheduled for, and then you can save about $12 million in 2028 versus what you're currently scheduled for. So you have these 3 seasons, and that's after you do the maximum restructures in 2025 and 2026. So if you take the best case scenario for the next 3 seasons, and then the Dolphins want to go a different direction once all the guaranteed money runs out, they can still save $10+ million against the cap in each of 2027 and 2028. I'm letting this hang for a reason. I'll let that sink in. I know this is a lot of numbers. I know this is a lot of information. I know we're drinking through the fire hose right now. But as you get these full terms and you sit down and you look at this and you say, okay, here's the wins for Tua. Okay, here's the wins for the Dolphins. The Dolphins kind of have a firm commitment for 3 seasons in which logic is going to dictate unless something dramatic comes along as far as a dramatic shift or change of direction that's just too good to be true. With how it's structured, they're at least in place to take it. But logic would dictate 2024, 2025, and 2026 are years in which Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. And then in 2027, that's kind of when that next fork in the road with decisions is going to come. And I don't think it's necessarily coincidence that coincides 2026, right? It's when Tyreek Hill's contract currently is set to expire. Now, we'll see if they end up doing something with that deal or not. But the next 3 years nucleus of this team, kind of phasing guys into big contracts, phasing guys out of big contracts, locking guys up long-term that were part of your draft. That's kind of where we're at within this life cycle of the Dolphins. This competitive window with probably this ideology that you saw this offseason for Miami, I would assume will continue through 2026. And they'll try to put the best roster around their pillar players that they possibly can. And they are continuing to identify who those pillar players are. Tua Tagovailoa is now amongst them with a contract extension. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins, breaking down the Dolphins contract with Tua with the full details courtesy of a report from Pro Football Talk. Also, Spot Rack chipping in with putting it all together. My own individual interpretation of that as far as a spreadsheet with colors, pretty colors, automatic populating cells that calculate the numbers as you put it in, all that stuff. But this one's in the books, right? And for $235 million across 5 seasons, the exchange of that for Miami, when you really sit down, you want to boil it down to a very simplistic exchange is how long did Robert Hunt and Christian Wilkins sign for, and what dollar amounts did they sign for? Because Christian Wilkins signed 4 years, $110 million. Robert Hunt signed 5 years for $100 million. So that's 210 versus a $212 million contract for Tua. That's the exchange that took place. If you want to just have basic math. I'm not a math guy, but I can do that. The last thing, the performance incentives, not the workout bonuses and the per game active bonuses. There are bonuses attached to this that required Tua to play at least 50% of the snaps in any given season. And then it's tiered. Every postseason win that you log, there's a 6-figure bonus that's attached to. And that goes all the way up to if you play 50% of the snaps in the season and you win the Super Bowl, there's an extra $1 million available to you. Let's hope we get that. Let's cash that one in and then worry about what that does to the salary cap, right? But that is kind of the carrot that's dangled for all parties involved to get it done, is a 7-figure financial bonus for a win in the big game. I know there's a lot of questions. There's been plenty of people who have chimed in their interpretation that they think just because this contract was given out, the Dolphins will never sniff any playoff postseason success. Would love to prove them wrong, but the team has to go out and do that. That's going to do it for us here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We have public practice tomorrow coming your way. I'll be at the facility to break down practice after it happens. I look forward to that, and I hope to see you then. Go Dolphins.